Right, so time now for the business news, and Charles Pellegrin joins me on the set. So good morning, Charles.
Hi,
good to
Rochelle.
see you. And you're here to tell me, among other things, about the French economy under Hollande's presidential term.
That's right. Hollande has vowed not to run for re-election, and many are pointing to his poor economic performance as a reason for this. One thing that he'd said was contingent on him seeking a second term was an inversion, as he said, of French unemployment. So let's take a closer look at this particular area. When he took office, there were close to 3 million people without any sort of professional activity in France, and this figure kept growing until he made his promise on the inversion of joblessness in April 2014. That still kept rising until it reached its apex in February of this year, with over 3.5 million unemployed. Since then, the curve has dropped a little bit. The latest figures we have are just under 3.5 million people, but too little, too late for Hollande. We saw a similar picture when it comes to GDP growth. Let's say it's been stuttering since 2012. Growth has in turn contracted, stagnated, then expanded before contracting slightly again in mid-2016. It's back up again, but it's just showed that the French economy has been stuttering. And one last thing, Hollande had run on bringing the budget deficit down to below 3% of the GDP. That's a European target. And that's definitely a promise he wasn't able to keep. The government estimates that it will fall at a 2.7% level in 2017. However, too little, too late for Hollande.
Okay, Charles, in the US, Donald Trump, US president-elect, of course, says he's convinced a company not to move jobs to Mexico.
The president-elect seems to have scored an early PR coup by announcing a deal to keep over 1,000 jobs at air conditioning manufacturer Carrier from moving to Mexico from Indiana. However, details on the deal are vague and could involve huge federal incentives. In Mexico, there's been a lot of uncertainty surrounding the arrival of Trump at the head of the United States. He's vowed to implement protectionist policies that would hurt trade with its southern neighbor. This has caused the peso to drop against the dollar, and to add to the uncertainty, the governor of the Mexican Central Bank announced he was going to step down. More with Brian Quinn.
The Mexican peso tossed by the winds of change lately. First, the presidential campaign of Donald Trump, with his promises to tear up trade agreements and build a border wall.
And I will have Mexico pay for that wall.
Now it faces an administrative shakeup. Mexican Central Bank Governor Agustín Carstens announced Thursday that he would step down from his post, effective July. The peso quickly dropped 1% against the dollar, a move Carstens denied was tied to his resignation.
It's an exaggeration to think that movement in today's exchange rate is attributed to my decision. I think that what has happened is a reaction to changes in international interest rates.
Carstens had suggested during the campaign that a Trump presidency would hit Mexico like a hurricane. After Trump's victory, he softened his predictions. Likewise, Mexican telecom billionaire Carlos Slim. Prior to the election, he said Trump's economic plans could destroy the U.S. economy. At a Bloomberg forum in Mexico City Thursday, he hoped instead for a successful Trump administration.
If the economy grows 4%, if they take out taxes to middle class, and they make investment in infrastructure, and he creates 25 million jobs, that's fantastic for Mexico.
While the campaign rhetoric was often harsh, Trump's actual policies towards Mexico once he takes office remain to be seen.
Okay, Charles, take us through the markets this morning.
Well, in Europe, markets opened in negative territory. Political uncertainty is looming large, making investors cautious. A no vote in the Italian referendum on Sunday could be bad news for the Italian banking sector. And François Hollande's announcement also put a spanner in the works. You can see the FTSE in London down by 0.8%, the Paris CAC 40 down 0.9%, and the DAX in Frankfurt down 0.10%. In Asia, markets slowing down a bit after rising on the back of the OPEC deal, cutting oil production, and on the dollar's strength taking a break. A high dollar is generally a good sign for Japanese exporters, so that's a reason for the Nikkei closing in negative territory at 0.5%, down 0.5%. The Shanghai Composite in China down 0.8% as well there. Investors are also awaiting a U.S. jobs report this Friday afternoon.
Okay, and finally, this is very, very exciting news. We're heading back to the future. Charles, the cult sci-fi movie, is behind one of Nike's latest sneaker innovations. Tell us more.
Well, really, we're heading back to the Future. The American sportswear company is releasing its first version of the Hyper-Adapt sneaker this Friday afternoon. It's inspired by Marty McFly, the main character from the Back to the Future 1980s trilogy. In the second installment, he travels to 2015, that was the future back then, and meets his son, who's wearing sneakers that are self-lacing. Imagine that. Well, Nike has been working on it for 10 years, apparently, and a first version available to the public for $720 is coming out in the States this Friday. It's got a mechanism built into the sole that then contracts or expands in order to perfectly fit your foot. You can press on buttons on the side to control it. You also have to charge the battery once a month. Nike says this is not a gimmick. This is something they're banking on for the future.
$700 though.
Yes, well,
Come on.
First model.
I think I'll wait till they go on sale. Okay, that's just a little bit that's a little bit crazy. Charles, thank you very much for that. So that was Charles Pellegrin with the Business Roundup.